All right then, good afternoon, everyone. Today is February 24th, 2021. This is a special meeting of the members of the State Liquor Authority being conducted in Albany and also remotely. We have in attendance Chairman Bradley by telephone.
Yes, I'm here.
We have Commissioner Ford and Commissioner Fan both participating by video. Staff in attendance, we have Associate Attorney Frering, representing Counsel's Office. We have Deputy Commissioner of Licensing Roberts on the telephone.
I'm here, thanks.
And myself, Secretary Donahue, in the Albany offices. We have 3 items on today's calendar. There are requests from Counsel's Office for emergency orders of summary suspension. The first item is agenda number 510S, New York OP 1180023, Kapatsu LLC. You're muted.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lawrence Schwartz for Counsel's Office. We're respectfully requesting an emergency order of suspension pursuant to Section 4013 of the State Administrative Procedure Act. We're making this request as the result of executive order and other violations putting the health, safety, and welfare of the public at risk. The subject premises is Papazzul Restaurant. It's located at 55 Grand Street in Lower Manhattan. This premises has had an OP license since November 1st of 2006. The task force conducted the investigation in this matter on February 21st, shortly after midnight. Members of the task force had heard music and they'd seen people hanging around the entrance. The windows to the premises were blocked with curtains. Task force members knocked on the door and the door wasn't answered. But the task force members were able to go in later behind a group, which apparently had some kind of a password or knew someone who was inside. Now, inside these premises, the situation was that it was set up almost like a pre-pandemic club would have been. There were never supposed to be more than 65 people on the premises, and under the governor's order in effect on the 21st, there should have been no more than 18 people inside. Instead, there were 94. The 94 people inside were dancing, they were drinking. You have a very good set of photos in your materials that the investigator took. You can see that everyone inside is standing very close together. And looking at those photographs, you can't see anyone wearing a mask. None of the patrons or employees are visible wearing one. This building has been around since 1930, so it's got bad ventilation. There was no one eating. The staff told the investigators that the kitchen had closed at 10 o'clock after the party started. This is taking place an hour after the 11 p.m. curfew that was in effect, and the party was still going strong at that time. Now, as it became known among the people in there that law enforcement was on the scene, people started leaving very rapidly, including, according to some of the employees who stayed, the people who were running the place also left. The investigators were told by the employees that the price of admission that night had been $65. There were 8 fire code violations. The front door, apparently the only door, was being kept locked. There was no panic bar, although someone did open it after they realized that the place was being inspected. There were disused sparklers lying on the floor. This licensee has no adverse history. However, it's submitted that this licensee has engaged in conduct which is very clearly in violation of the restrictions on licensed premises at this point in the pandemic. There were nearly 100 people standing in close proximity, talking, dancing, not wearing masks. Assuming that the information from the employees was accurate, more than $6,000 was collected in cover charges for this one night at the premises. That's exclusive, of course, of any profits on the sale of alcohol. So I submit that this is a textbook case of conduct which the executive orders, SLA, and Department of Health rules are designed to prevent. This is a serious danger to the patrons, the staff, the families, and the general public. The behavior is an imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare and requires summary suspension. Thank you.
All right, then Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
Larry, tell me again when they were first issued the license?
November 1st of 2006, Commissioner.
And who's on the license?
His name is, hold on, please, I'm sorry. It's Musil Theory.
And he was obviously not on site.
As far as we know, a number of people left. The employees told the investigators that the people who were running the place left when the inspection began.
Do you get a sense that the people who were running the place were not the licensee, or you don't really have a sense?
Well, I spoke to the investigator and he wasn't sure. It may have been that it was the licensee, but it may also have been that this is pure speculation, but it may have been that the licensee was allowing a promoter to take over the place and run an event. That's based that they were charging a $65 cover charge, and they had closed the kitchen. Apparently they put away the tables and chairs and to make more room for people to jump around and dance and listen to music.
Okay. Did you see or did you find any invitation to the actual event or not really?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Ford, any questions?
When you said the doors were locked, Counselor, you meant they were locked from the outside?
Yes, there apparently is only one door, according to the investigator, and it was certainly kept locked when they were trying to get in. When they knocked on the door, no one would open it. But then a group of young people came up to the door and they knocked, and apparently someone looked out through a curtain and opened it and asked them who they knew or something along those lines, and they were able to give the correct answer. So the person who was in charge of the door opened it and let them in, and the investigators followed in behind them.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
Chairman Bradley, any questions?
I have no questions.
I would now call for the vote of the members. First, Commissioner Fan.
Based on evidence submitted by Counsel Schwartz and pictures submitted by the investigator into evidence, it's clear that this location is an imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare, and I vote to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford.
Based on evidence presented by counsel, I find this location to be a threat to the public health, safety, and welfare, and I also vote to summarily suspend this license.
Chairman Bradley.
I vote to summarily suspend. It's clear this licensee is a threat to the public health, safety, and welfare.
All right, then the next item I have is 510T, New York OP 1289170, Cocktail Art LLC.
Good afternoon. This is Margarita Marsico on behalf of Counsel's Office, requesting that the members issue an order of summary suspension as to Cocktail Art LLC, which is located at 14 Avenue C in the Lower East Side. This premise has had its license since May 18th of 2016. In essence, Counsel's Office is requesting you issue the summary suspension because the licensee is permitting its patrons to be inside the premise, too many patrons inside, and is permitting the patrons to dance and smoke hookah without a permit. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. This licensee does have prior history. When this license was first issued in 2016, there was a lot of community opposition to this license being issued, and they agreed to numerous community board stipulations, including the fact that they were going to soundproof their premise and that they were going to have background music only. And so prior to being inspected on February 20th, they did have this adverse history, which included failure to conform to the application, failure to comply with noise rules, and another failure to conform to application. And those incidents happened in January of 2018. They paid a $12,000 fine for that. And then there was another incident in August of 2017 for a failure to permit an inspection, for using an unauthorized trade name, using an unlicensed security guard, and failure to conform to application. So they do have some adverse history. So as the report from investigators Travali indicates, that the task force did go in response to some complaints. When they were outside, they could hear loud music from about 40 feet away. Once they got inside, they observed 43 patrons inside, not socially distancing. The tables were between 6 and 12 inches apart, literally back to back, Investigator Stravali said. The manager admitted that there were over 18 people, which would be their maximum allowable occupancy, which is the 25% of their occupancy. So he admitted it was over 18, that he knew it was over 18. And the investigator did a head count and confirmed there was actually 43 patrons inside. The investigator saw that in the kitchen was closed. There was no food in the refrigerator, and he did not observe any food being eaten. When he spoke to the manager gave conflicting stories as to who's operating this premise. At first, he said he bought the premise about 2 years ago and that he changed the name to Sea Lounge. And then later on in the conversation, the manager said, in fact, he didn't own the premise. Then the sheriff caught the fact that someone named Sharif Bashir was calling on the phone. He could see the name popping up on the caller ID on the phone that was visible to the sheriffs. And the sheriff also was aware that Sharif Bashir is one of the named licensed principals. This premise is theoretically owned by two people, Sharif Bashir and a Robert Pearl. When this license was initially granted in 2016, the legal representative at that time, represented to the board that the person who's going to be running and had all the experience was someone named Trumbull, who's no longer on the license. So he's off the license, but we're left with Mr. Bashir, Mr. Pearl. So in any event, when Mr. Bashir kept calling, the manager kept hanging up on Mr. Bashir and saying, we're closed. So as the report indicates, the sheriff was confronting this manager as to why he was hanging up on the owner. So that is a very peculiar circumstance. And, just what was going on that you could see from the pictures that were taken by the investigators, there's just no supervision. There's patrons that are dancing with no masks. They're over occupancy. They're smoking hookah without a license. They're not serving food. So they're essentially, their employees aren't wearing masks. So they're essentially violating every rule. And then they're also violating the fire life safety rules. Extension cords, curtains are hung over the egress door, which is very, very dangerous. No flame proofing for the curtain that's covering the egress door, obstructed egress, obviously selling the hookah without a permit. So counsel's office is going to look into this ownership issue, but clearly this licensee is not supervising adequately. And we believe that they present an imminent threat to the public safety. So we're requesting that you summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Fan, any questions?
Margarita, you said that there was a DJ playing
Yes,
and they're allowed background music only.
yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Ford, any questions?
Yes, you said they paid a $12,000 civil penalty in 2018. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you also said something in 2017. Did they pay a penalty for that from the board as well?
Yes, they did. They
No.
paid $7,500 for failure to conform to the application on licensed security guards. Excessive noise.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you very much.
Chairman Bradley, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
All right, then, with that, I'll call for the vote of the members. First, Commissioner Fan.
Based on evidence submitted by Council Marsico and some of the pictures submitted into evidence, it's clear that this location continues to be an imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare by breaching some of the governor's executive orders surrounding COVID-19. I'm therefore voting to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford.
I vote to summarily suspend this license as well, based on evidence presented by counsel.
And Chairman Bradley.
I vote to summarily suspend. It's clear this licensee is a threat to the public health, safety, and welfare.
All right, then the next item I have is 510U, Queens OP 127-3358. Licensee is LCP Bar Corp.
Good afternoon, members. We're requesting that you issue an order of summary suspension as to this licensee doing business as Acapulco Bar Restaurant, which is located at 43-20 31st Avenue in Astoria, Queens. Basically, the facts are as follows. On February 20th of this year, at about 2:42 in the morning, the Queens Vice Module went to visit the premise based on some complaints that they've received from residents, indicating that this premise was operating beyond hours and was violating restrictions. While the lieutenant was there, and we've worked with him in the past, so we're familiar with him. While he was there, he heard a 911 call go over about a robbery at the place inside the premise, and the lieutenant actually saw a sector patrol officer respond, go to the roll down gate of the premise, which was closed and in a locked position, see that it was closed, and then that patrol officer left, believing the premise was closed. So the vice unit remained there observing the premise, and then they actually had an illegal valet person accost one of the undercover detectives who was in the car, offering to park their car at the mobile station, which is nearby this place, for $20. So it appears that there's an operation going on to park cars at this mobile station. They sat there for a while longer. The lieutenant then observed approximately 15 people at different times going in and out of a side entrance of the premise. The lieutenant went to the side entrance. An individual later identified as Alfredo Rodriguez opened the door, said buenas noches. The lieutenant said buenas noches, policia. He went in. Mr. Rodriguez had shined a light on the lieutenant. He was acting as a security guard in essence. Mr. Rodriguez ran away. The lieutenant looked inside and he saw approximately 100 people, most of whom were not wearing masks. He told me maybe about a dozen of the entire group were wearing masks. There were people in the VIP area, dancing, drinking. People were smoking hookah at the bar. There was a very large, you could see from the photographs, it's like 30-foot wide bar where people are sitting smoking hookah, not socially distancing. There were 15 tables with patrons seated that were not socially distanced. The tables were not 6 feet apart from each other. There was a DJ and the music was playing very loudly. The lieutenant did go to the basement and he saw that the lights were off in the kitchen. He didn't hear any food sizzling. There didn't appear to be any cooking going on in the kitchen. He didn't see a cook in the kitchen. He didn't see any food anywhere on the tables. He didn't see any plates, any empty plates. He did see buckets of Corona, Modelo, beer, and he saw hard liquor in the VIP area. He saw about 12 patrons dancing in the VIP area and near the VIP area. When the lieutenant was trying to investigate what was going on, he was trying to interview this Rodriguez person who was acting as a security guard. Mr. Rodriguez then said he wasn't a security guard, he was just a patron. And the lieutenant confronted him with the fact that he was still wearing the flashlight, which he used to look at the lieutenant when the lieutenant initially tried to go in. When the lieutenant tried to ask the 2 female bartenders who were behind the bar as to who was in charge, the 2 female bartenders pointed at each other, and then one said that she was in charge. There were approximately a dozen staff members in the place, between waitresses and busboys and things like that. The lieutenant then got a translator to really try to get some information from Mr. Rodriguez, a Spanish translator. And then Rodriguez said that the owner had run away, that he didn't have the owner's phone number. But then as it turns out, Mr. Rodriguez had the keys to the place and Mr. Rodriguez helped them close the bar. So it's not clear who, if anyone, is supervising this premise. And they didn't have books and records to produce to the lieutenant either. So this premise really presents an imminent threat. And in addition, I would just note that they have a pending case, case 140918 for disorderly premise. And that incident occurred in 2019. In that incident, there was a large fight inside and a bottle was thrown and struck somebody and injured them. And that when the police tried to investigate, everybody there was singularly unhelpful. They refused to tell them who was the manager, who was responsible. So it appears to be a continuing theme with this licensee that they're just not very helpful with police investigations. They have two named principals, one person named Lazaro Cisnero, another one named Angelo Peralta, but neither of these two individuals were there, apparently. This license has been in existence since 2014. So based on all of what was going on there and just the way they evaded the police and didn't fully cooperate with the police, we're requesting that you issue an order of summary suspension.
Commissioner Fan, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you, Tom.
Commissioner Ford, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Chairman Bradley, any questions?
No, I have no question.
All right, with that, I'll call for the vote of the members. First, Commissioner Fan.
Based on evidence presented by Counsel Marsico and pictures submitted into the evidence by the investigator, it's clear that this location, it's violating the governor's executive orders and also multiple other ABC laws, and therefore creating imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare. I'm voting to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford, your vote, please.
Based on evidence presented by counsel, I am also voting to summarily suspend this license.
And Chairman Bradley.
Based on council's presentation, it's clear this licensee is a threat to the public health, safety, and welfare, and I'm voting to summarily suspend.
All right, with that, Chairman, I have no other items for the calendar. Do you have anything else?
No, thank you all. Have a good rest of the week.
All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.